So we'll start at B, and we'll just assume is generally everything that I say is going to be centered around the idea of the CT smoke being there. If it exists, I mean, it's not going to be there in most of the examples, but we're going to pretend that it is. When you're retaking Inferno B site, the first thing that you want to do is if you don't have backhaul control, okay, you need to be aware of that, okay? But also you need to be aware of someone on top of first oranges. These are the two main threats initially when you get to the site. Okay, once we've cleared this out, you just have to do a quick check. Just go ahead and look. Once you've cleared this out, there's a couple of things that you can do, and we'll start. Okay, you can smoke off banana if the majority of your team is coming from, CT. And I say the majority because if there's one guy coming from banana, it's okay if he comes late because most of the time they're not going to be expecting you to smoke your own teammate off, so it could be beneficial in some situations. And then we also have a couple of flashes that we're going to talk about, but we're going to discuss the mollies first. Mollies are important, but one thing that I really don't like about people throwing Molotovs and retakes is that most of the time in pugs, people throw mollies without any reason. For example, someone will molly new box, and there won't be anyone ready to receive, the player. That's how I like to put it. For example, again, if I'm playing new box and you molly me off, all I have to do is just run here. If no one's here to catch me, right? No one's here to catch me or punish me for being there when the molly goes off. So if you're gonna throw mollies, make sure that you have a teammate that can do something about it, because otherwise it's pointless. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is there's a bunch of different lineups, and I'm gonna show you how to molly everything from everywhere. Okay, because it's useful to know how to do everything from everywhere rather than just having one set lineup. Okay, so now that we've got that covered, we're going to start with the new box molly. Again, assuming that CT is smoked, okay? The first thing that you can do is line up with this shadow and just give it like, tap W and then let go of it, the molly. Okay, you have to practice this one. This one's pretty hard and it's not, but it is a lot more consistent than some of the other ones once you understand how it actually works. So you can molly new box like that, but also, if you see this top right of this window, you can run throw at this. And this is going to be safer for you to do at lower levels or just in general, I think. This is a safe, reliable new box molly just at the top right of this window. Now we can talk about mollying dark. There's a couple of different ways to do it. If you'll notice, there is two little things on top. Both of those are supposed to be like guides for you to know where things are. For example, again, you can see where new box is just because of where this is at. So I know that like this is about where like the corners of it are. So it's good for spamming. But if you can see this part, you can actually molly dark just by jumping and throwing it. The problem is if you throw it like this, you're opening up the opportunity for you to get spammed. So the safer molly is to come into this corner just like so, aim right here, and jump throw when you cross this board. So just like this, and boom, that's gonna molly dark. And again, remember only to throw this if you have someone ready to catch the player running out. Otherwise, the Molotov is pointless because again, if I step out and nobody kills me, then once the molly is gone, I can come back, and then it doesn't mean anything. Okay. Coming from banana, it's going to be mostly just like executing. You can molly dark. I would prioritize mollying dark over new box since the majority of the time, dark is harder to deal with since two players play there, double dark and stuff like that. So I would prioritize mollying dark in most retakes. If you're gonna throw a flash, you should probably not throw any flashes that go over sight because they could potentially blind your teammates whether they're in backhaul or in CT. So instead, a simple flash like this is gonna get the job done. It'll most of the time catch players in pit, as well as if there's someone coughing or here or anywhere that's directly looking at banana. This flash is going to be super effective in helping you just take some contact here. Flashes in the general area where they should land. So if you have the majority of your team coming from banana, you want to throw a flash that's going to land about right here. Because it's not going to blind your teammates coming in on the retake, and it will for sure blind most of the people that are directly looking at them. If the majority of your players are coming from backhaul or CT, you want your flashes to land somewhere in this area because it's going to blind the main places, second, sometimes a new box, dark if they're in the open, and banana, okay? So we'll talk about that. The first flash, you can throw it just like this. It's really easy. This will land right above banana, just sort of like a god flash, but more for like a retake. And it does the same thing as the god flash, except it helps you retake, and you can throw it from CT. You could throw the God Flash on the retake as well if you don't know the God Flash. This is the lineup. You could throw it. It's pretty effective, but the problem is that sometimes it'll blind your players coming from CT. And if you guys are coming from backhaul, make sure that you throw your flash like this. I always aim at the bottom of this circle. Just walk and jump throw. These flashes are going to land in a way where it's not going to blind your teammates, and anyone looking at Coffin is pretty much guaranteed to be blind. So again, full blind, and that goes for almost everywhere except for new box. A couple of other things that you can do is if you're here, you can throw a flash off the wall like this before you peek, which will stop this Coffin player and the second orange player from being able to shoot you immediately. And then after that, you can actually molly new box from here. It might seem dangerous if you don't realize that this is the angle that you don't want to peek, and you can molly new box standing right here. You have a lot more room than you think you do to molly new box, so it's actually a lot safer than it may seem. So you can molly new box like this, and then you can molly dark. You can molly dark off this pillar, and there is also another lineup that you can use. Okay, the lineup is like this, where you run, throw it at the fountain, and it goes into this deep corner. That's really good. And you can also molly pit like this, in the same logic. It's a little hard. You do need to make sure that you practice it in the server before you are gonna implement it into your game. Because even I know, and I can do it most of the time, and I still have trouble doing it. But generally, you could just do it like this. This one also works with the flash. If you're able to successfully do it like this, it'll go into pit, and it's just like flashing into pit for retaking. Not a lot of people know how to utilize HE grenades on retakes, and so I'll give you a couple of general ideas. You can nade pit, so we're assuming that this is a common angle for the terrorist to play in post plant. Just about right here. This seems about right, the correct angle. All you have to do is you come here, aim at the bottom left of this sign and walk through, and it'll land right on his head. And even if he's not playing right there, if he's playing here, this still does about 30 damage to him. It's really effective. You can also nade the planner if you're here, or you can nade default just by coming here and aiming right up here at the top and run throwing. This will nade the planner every single time, and it also works with the molly. Both of these work with the molly. Super effective. That pretty much covers everything at B, so we'll go ahead and move on to A. So for A, what we have here is we have a couple of different mollies. The first thing that we're going to talk about though is the lurk smoke. This is really, really important for retakes because otherwise it's hard to get through. So if Moto smoked, okay, we need to be able to get through the Moto smoke without being exposed to literally every angle that exists on Inferno. So the first thing that you're going to do is throw the lurk smoke. Now there's two ways to throw this. The first one is from this side you come aim under the X right here and walk through. This is where it should land. It blocks off pit and mini pit, and it lets you scale up to fight sight. You can also throw it from library if you come here and aim right in the middle of the door and walk though. Same idea. It doesn't always go as deep, so you can play with it a little bit, and you can throw it on this left side. But the problem is the farther you go over here, the more exposed you are to cold, so just at your own risk. And the first one, this is a lineup that you can use. The left side of this mailbox here, okay, there's a dot on this board. It might be hard to see right there. All you have to do is aim straight up from here to the wire and let go when you cross here. It's a walk through. So just like this, and it lands right on top of cold. And this will get most of the angles that are gonna, be directly contesting you coming in through Moto. There's another molly that you can throw. It's very similar. All you have to do is just aim up from the middle of this pillar in this corner with the pipe. And this is assuming that Moto is smoked, because if it's not, then you can't throw this. Keep that in mind. You come here, aim straight up to the height of this, and then jump through. And this is going to get into backside and get rid of all of the rest of the angles that you have to deal with. So if you actually throw both of them, you completely get rid of every angle on site that they could be using. Just remember that if you throw a molly, it can get smoked and potentially create one-ways on site, so just keep in mind if they smoke your molly that there could be some cheese angles that they're playing. Okay, generally you want your flashes to land up here in graveyard, because people scaling up with the lurk smoke are going to be fighting like this, and these are going to blind everybody looking at them, including people in pit. These flashes land up here, and they're really hard to deal with for everybody. So flashes should just land up here. If you have flashes, make sure you flash over here. I do have another idea for something that could potentially be useful in certain situations, and it's how to molly mini pit. All you have to do is come here, aim above this, and jump throw, and it goes right into mini pit. That's while you're standing in the doorway of library as well. So just stand in the doorway, jump throw. This could molly mini pit. It's experimental. I'm not sure how useful it'll be, but I am just spreading the word of it, and we'll see how useful it ends up being later on. Okay. You can molly cold without having to actually peek cold just by mollying off this pillar if you forget the lineups, or you can do it on the fly. This will molly cold just like so. And you can also molly dark in this back corner just by bouncing it off this box. Alright, so now let's come from lane. We don't really want to throw these pit flashes if you have someone coming from Moto because it will in fact blind them. So it's just better off that you throw flashes like this that are going to be used for peeking, and you're going to have a better time with that. So when you have a smoke, a lot of people are going to be tempted to try to smoke off pit and things like that. You actually don't really want to do that most of the time, because if you throw a smoke that lands like right here, you're actually giving this pit player the opportunity to do something like this, potentially. He can jump up into graveyard, he could play around the smoke, he could do this as well. Anything along these lines, you don't really want to have to deal with that, so you don't even give him a chance. As well as if you mess it up, you can even let them out like this, and then this could be round over for you if you're not careful. So I would actually advise against throwing smokes coming from lane, and instead opt just for throwing mollies, okay? There's so many powerful molotovs that you can throw coming from lane, and I'll go ahead and show you a couple of them. Okay, so the first one is, as soon as you see this top right of the box, you actually just aim at it and left click, and this will molly cold. This lands in the exact same spot as the other lineup from over here, but you can throw it from lane, and it's very useful. And if you want to molly back sight, you can just come here and throw it like this. You might be worried about being exposed to other angles, but we're assuming that you've already cleared these to throw these, okay? You don't just come here and go, I'm going to molly back sight, because that's not a good idea. You want to make sure that you know where people are and you don't just run with utility in your hands. It's nice to know the util, but only use it if you actually have the chance to use it. You shouldn't die trying to throw a grenade, okay? But if you're coming from lane, you can check graveyard just like this, and also you get to here and you decide you want to molly mini pit again. All you have to do is come to this bench, and I accidentally let go left click, and left click right there, and this will go right into mini pit again. This is just assuming that you already have an idea that someone is there. Finally, if you don't have anyone coming from Moto, you can actually throw a flash just like this that you can use to scale up like so. Again, this flash will actually blind most players. If a player is playing in mini pit like this, if a player is playing in pit, the flash will completely destroy them. And also, it works for people on site. It's like a makeshift chimney flash. So with all of that said, we'll get to the final place that you could be coming from, which is apps. If you're coming from apps on the retake, generally you're going to be last contact. You don't want to come out apps, you don't want to peek first, because peeking apps is really, really hard to deal with, especially since most of the time there's a player dedicated to just exclusively watching you. So you're going to want to make sure that you play this correctly. Now, the first thing that you can do is you can walk up and clear the basic angles. For example, most of the time you'll be able to see someone's arm. If they're not playing correct, you'll be able to see someone's arm here, which is really good information. So you can check no one's arm, then you can check graveyard, and then after that, you're pretty much clear to go. Now you can throw grenades. If you have a smoke, this is the smoke that you should be throwing. This actually puts a lot of pressure on the pit player, because if someone from site was watching apps, he no longer can assist the pit player.